Hello and welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Concept Show. I'm your host Paul Rook and we are live, we're recording live on the PA UK network. I'm joined as always in the studio by my two lovely co-hosts, Kerry Greenaway and Richie Clements. Hello guys.
Oh, it's good to know. Hi guys. It's good to know I'm still lovely.
I was just about to say that. We're still lovely.
Of course you are. You're doing my research for me. I've got to be nice here, otherwise I won't be able to do shows anymore.
Oh dear. So how's your week been, guys?
Yeah, same as the week before and the week before that. And the last 6 weeks.
Well, at this end, I'm starting to sort of pick myself up a bit and starting just to head forward and sort of be positive. And yeah, I think we might have a few little sort of things to look forward to after the past sort of 6 or 7 weeks or so. And let's keep our fingers crossed and let's hope so, eh, guys?
Yeah, let's definitely hope so. It's all starting to, I hesitantly say, look a little bit more positive than it has been in the last few weeks. But it is, I have to say, it's been one of the strangest times of my life, this whole scenario, because it's been like, it just has turned your life upside down and very quickly as well. And it's been very mentally challenging, I think, for a lot of people. So chin up, guys. We are getting there and there are positive signs, but we have a very reserved positive signs. You know, don't want to get too excited too quickly.
No, that's right. You know, we don't want to put out any false sort of hope or anything. But,
No.
you know, just the general sort of feeling going around and whatever it is has got to be sort of better than what we're sort of experiencing at the moment.
I think one thing I will say is the VE Day celebrations on Friday. I saw a lot of street parties and people at the front of their house, social distancing, neighbours getting out the front of their houses, music being played, live singers coming out with their systems and doing live music. And that was a very uplifting feeling of seeing other life. Up to now, whenever you've gone for a walk or something, it's been very closed doors. You know, you're not seeing many people when you go out, apart from if you hit the supermarkets. But on VE Day, when everybody
Makes you
came,
proud to be British.
I have to say, yeah, and still following the government guidelines. You know, they were still able to follow the government guidelines, but enjoy yourself under the circumstances. And I think that shows people's resilience of overcoming hardship. You know, because I know this isn't as hard as what they had it in the war. You know, that's completely incomparable. But it just shows that you can overcome difficulties if you do it with common sense, and you can do it within the guidelines. I felt that was so uplifting, the VE Day celebrations.
Yes, I certainly sort of enjoyed sort of following the coverage along, and and I think it sort of made people be a bit more inventive. And if anything, I think and you hope that we will all come out the other side of this, with a slightly new perspective and new outlook on life.
I think
absolutely. I mean, I had 1940s radio on. So it was playing all like the 1940s stuff, and then we had a picnic in the front room because we haven't got a balcony or a garden or anything, so we had that in the front room, and it was nice to actually again watch the Queen on the telly.
Yeah, good old Queenie.
Yeah, I mean, although it started off with her father's address to the nation 75 years ago, I thought that was quite good. I was impressed with that.
I do love Queenie. I am very much a royalist, I have to say. Probably if it could take me back in the day, I probably would have been total royalist rather than a parliamentarian. But
good girl.
I know, right? I definitely have a lot of admiration for the royal family, regardless of the criticisms they come under on a day-to-day basis. I do actually have a lot of admiration for them, and there are times like we've seen in recent times. She's been on twice recently through this horrible situation, and just seeing her and listening to her speak is very emotive, and it does kind of it does draw you together in a sense of purpose, even if you're not particularly a royalist. You know, she is the head of our country in the UK and many places around the world still, the Commonwealth, and she has got that presence, hasn't she?
She has, definitely.
Well, it's sort of
should we crack on with the rest of the show?
Oh, I suppose we ought to, really. That's the whole reason we're here.
Going from one like royal tradition or British tradition to another, we wanted to talk about the tradition of the Navy rum.
Yeah, good old
That's where you
Navy
want
rum.
to start. Yeah,
yes,
good old
it's
British
sort of like
tradition.
a bit of a carry-on from last week, really, isn't it? I mean, because rum is sort of synonymous with the smugglers.
Most definitely.
Absolutely.
It does carry through quite nicely because this was one area we did look into. But because it was sort of not to do with smuggling, it was more to do with, like, the Navy side of things. It kind of was, you know, we left it, so that's why we're talking about it this week. Now, sailors always had a ration of alcohol. It was originally beer that they had, and they used to, God, I can't believe how much they gave them. When you think about it, they were given a daily ration of 1 gallon of beer.
Yeah.
That's 8 pints.
Mm-hmm.
1 point, and I'm drunk. 8, I would have been rolling drunk. I would have been on my back, not being able to function drunk.
Yeah.
Well, I very
Believe me,
much
I've seen
doubt.
that.
I very much doubt it was sort of pints of Stella or stuff. It would have been sort of like a watered down beer because
Like Foster's.
back in the day, yeah, I mean, sort of like beer was much safer to drink than water, so they would have had like a small ale, they would have called it, which was a low alcohol type content, and it would have been drunk really just to rehydrate like you drink water today.
Yeah, that's true. Most of the times, you know, they would drink, you know, different, what we would class as an alcohol base, even in day-to-day living, you know, it would be, you know, a watered-down beer or ale or mulled wine and, you know, things like that would be more on your table than a pitcher of water. You know, nowadays we go to a restaurant and we have a pitcher of water, but, you know, back in the day the water wasn't very palatable like it is now. We didn't have taps, you know.
No.
Now,
Especially on the old ships.
Exactly. Now, this actual official allowance of 1 gallon continued until after the Napoleonic Wars, but beer does spoil quite easily. So when that had spoiled, or they'd drunk it all, it was substituted by a pint of wine or half a pint of spirits, depending on what was available. So sometimes it was rum, sometimes it would be gin.
Yeah.
Smugglers.
Like good old smugglers there, right? No. Yeah. So it all depended on what they could get hold of, basically, if the beer had gone or had spoiled.
Yeah, sort of whatever they went into port and what sort of spirits or wine based they could actually get their hands on, they would sort of just get it on board ship. So, yeah.
It was actually issued neat. I'm still thinking like a pint of, or half a pint of spirits, right? A pint of wine. That's what, 3/4 of a bottle. A pint of wine, yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
I'll go with half a pint of spirits, and I'm thinking just top that up with a little bit of Coke. That's strong, and also it was a lot higher alcohol content than we're used to now.
Yeah, it would have been back then, yeah.
Yeah. Now, when we, you know, this is so Pirates of the Caribbean, it's untrue, right? What? All the rum's gone? Where's the rum? The reason rum became so popular was because of the trading route between the West Indies, and the influence of that actually gave it preference of rum. So we've got this trading route going backwards and forwards, and rum became quite plentiful.
Yes, that's right. And I'm sure the West Indian traders sort of would have pushed it a lot as well to get it the drink of choice on board ships. I mean, I'm sure there was a bit of wheeling and a dealing going on there for that to be done, because that would have been quite a contract to get to supply Royal Naval vessels with your rum. surely.
And also, you imagine how lucrative that is. You can kind of understand why the colonies wanted to take over the West Indies area, and colonise it for themselves to make the most out of the profits of the place. I mean, that's a whole different story in its own right, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The slave trade and everything is a completely different thing. And I was wondering whether or not, because they're producing it straight from like the sugar beet fields and stuff straight into alcohol, it was probably better than some of the other spirits that were around.
Yeah, I think it was a lot more sort of like a pure sort of alcohol-based spirit than a lot of others. Yeah,
more
that would
palatable.
Absolutely. And didn't they check the strength of the rum by mixing it with gunpowder?
Yeah.
And see whether or not it would still burn.
Yeah.
Yeah, from what I can gather from this, yes, I used to get a bit of gunpowder, and it was called proofing, and this is, I suppose, where you get the word of proof for your alcohol. It's such and such a proof. You would soak a bit of gunpowder in your rum, and then you would set a flame to your gunpowder, and if it's still ignited, that means your rum was high in alcohol content, because alcohol obviously burns as well. If it was too watered down, the gunpowder just simply wouldn't ignite.
Yeah.
Preferably not too much gunpowder, though.
Well, no.
You imagine that? Oops, a little too much, everybody.
Yeah, it's just blown a hole in the ship's wall. It's definitely watered down now.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Or maybe you do that before you've actually drunk any of the rum.
Yeah. Maybe that's what caused all the panic when they used to sink.
No,
it's like, oh no, is it, oh no, we're sinking, or oh no, the rum's watered down.
Yeah.
Now, the practice of compulsory diluting of rum in the portion of 0.5 pint to 1/4 of water, which isn't a lot when you think about your watering down. That's not a lot of watering down, is it?
No,
it isn't, is it really?
Was first introduced in the 1740s by Admiral Edward Vernon, known as Old Grog.
Well, that's obviously where the name comes from, isn't it? Because grog is an old term for sort of like alcohol, spirits. They call it grog.
They do. The ration itself was actually split into 2 servings, one between 10 and noon, and the other between 4 and 6. So they're not giving you like 0.5 pint of rum, for example, and going, off you go then. Just drink that and off you go. They're actually splitting it into 2, so you can maintain a nice level of alcohol consumption throughout the day, and not just all in one go. It stops the binge drinking.
Well, that's it. It's almost like phasing it out, almost, isn't it? By controlling how much they can drink, so it isn't. So they're not drinking it all in one go and getting absolutely hammered.
Very
I'm
true.
sure a few sailors would have held their morning supply back for the evening.
Depends on what shift you're on.
Yeah.
That's it. But then in 1756, Navy regulations required adding of small quantities of lemon and lime juice to it as well to prevent scurvy. And I do believe that's where, especially the Australians, they call the British limeys.
Yeah.
And that's why.
That's right.
That's why they call us limeys, because we used to put lime in on board ships and stuff, so that we'd prevent scurvy that way.
Well, they noticed in the islands themselves that the scurvy wasn't a problem, even though they had a very poor diet, which you can imagine the conditions on a ship are very harsh.
Yeah.
They're hard conditions on a ship. But they actually noticed that scurvy wasn't a thing in the islands, and that's because lemons and limes were very prevalent. They grew on trees and stuff. And so that's why they did that. They introduced them.
Well, that's it. I mean, these days there's lots of fruits and stuff that go into the rums and gins as well.
Oh, yeah, you can make all sorts.
It sounds quite a new idea, but, they were doing it in the 1700s.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Add a bit of lemon, a bit of lime.
Yeah.
But you still get that in pubs now. Do you want, you can slice of lemon or...
Possibly that's where it comes from.
It's possibly where it does come from.
Yeah. So all the clubbers don't get scurvy.
Mind you, yes. And some of the clubs I used to go to years ago, yeah, and there was quite a few characters I think must have had scurvy in there, but that's another story.
That's a totally different story. Now, rations were actually cut in half in 1823 and again in half again to the traditional amount in 1850. Which kind of makes you wonder if there was a bit of an outcry about that because they're cutting back their alcohol consumption.
Well, yeah. I shouldn't imagine that went down very well, but,
No.
Such is life, I suppose.
Now, they did talk about the abolition of the rum ration in 1850, but they reduced it to the amount that it went down to. And again in 1881. But as you can imagine, I think they would have had a complete mutiny on their hands if they'd done that. But in 1970, so that's quite recent, really, 1970.
Yes. Yeah, I know a couple of people that used to be in the Navy back then, and they can remember having their daily tots of rum. So, yeah. So
one thing I would say on that, though, is when you go back to the 1800s, the ships they were sailing then compared to what they were sailing in the 1970s is massive difference in technology.
Yes, and this would have been a health and safety issue, surely.
Exactly.
I wonder when, like, obviously they abolished it. The Navy went into like a period where they withdrawal symptoms.
What, a period of mourning? Do you think?
Well, I mean, they're used to getting a daily ration and they're getting hammered on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So they must have had some sort of withdrawal symptoms like a few weeks after.
But they did actually replace it. They allowed them to have 3.5 cans of beer a day. They were able
okay, so they've gone back to beer then.
Yeah, well, because beer would have come in tins now, and it's just the modern day living would have sort of. There was no need to actually have strong spirits on board ship.
That makes sense.
But I also think if you look at it from a cultural perspective, life on board's very hard. You're actually easier to maintain control if you've got them in a more relaxed state of mind, shall we put it that way, with the rum allowances. But as life goes forward, as technology increases and, conditions improve and, it becomes a different ball game, doesn't it? So it's gradual. When you look at it, it's been a gradual weaning off process of that. Although they still felt it was their right because it's tradition, they've kind of changed. It's changed along with how boats are made, basically. Because when they did stop it, when they did finally sort of stop it, it was on the 31st of January 1970. It became known as Black Top Day, and that's when the rum was not. But like Richard said, they replaced it with like 3.5 cans of beer a day, but they've got more recreation as well going on ships. You'd have a rec room.
That's one hell of a weaning off process, isn't it? Over 200 years.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Sometimes I would think that other things were more pressingly worries, as it were.
Well, yeah, a modern ship, you can't have drunk sailors all wandering around it because, you have to be quite clever to be a sailor these days.
and I do actually think that they make up for it when they're on land.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is still rings true, and that is still true if you ever go down to Portsmouth on a Saturday night or when the ships are docked. Yes, they still have quite a few problems. I can rest assured I've actually been in Portsmouth on a Saturday night when an aircraft carrier came in, and that was quite interesting evening.
You can't keep up with a sailor's drinking, is all I will say. I have tried and failed. Oh, that's a whole different story as well. Anyway, whilst they had abolished the rum ration, in order to splice the main brace, they actually awarded sailors an extra tot of rum for good service. And this remained a command, but could only be given by the monarch, good old Queenie. You've got to chat up Queenie for this one. And it's even today, it is still used as recognition for good service.
Yes.
So does she? So I was wondering about this. Does she give you like a little tot of rum?
I think sort of on occasions like her sort of her Jubilee years or perhaps her birthday and stuff like that, I think all sailors will get a tot of rum, because the Queen will allow them to, as you said, to splice the main brace. And you can actually still buy, I was on HMS Belfast, which is a World War II cruiser moored in the Thames. It's a museum now. And you can actually still buy the bottles of naval rum, which is made by a company called Pussers. It's Pussers Naval Rum, and that is the original Navy rum. So it is still produced to a lesser degree. So
it's a lot less, as in the proof of it is obviously a lot less now.
Yeah, I should imagine so. It's sort of just the normal run-of-the-mill spirit now, sort of along the lines of, I should imagine, your whiskies and stuff like that, yeah.
Mm. And what is a tot? Is that what we would class as like a shot amount in a pub?
I think a tot is it is a measure, but I think it's a bit more than it's like a glassful. It is a good slug. Put it that way. I mean, I doubt it's like the measures we get in pubs. I think it is a bit more. But there's obviously some official sort of measure for a tot.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, though.
So this all came about whilst we were researching smugglers, but of course this, knowing us three, leads you down into a whole different rabbit hole of, what else is... what else can we explain away by certain things? So it's led us down into a different world completely of traditions on the high seas, as it were. We all know of certain ones, don't we? No women on board, and there are certain traditions and superstitions. You can't whistle on the ship and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
We know these, so we looked into a few of these. And going off the back of the rum and bearing in mind the West Indies and stuff, that opened up a whole new world in regards to what we could eat, foods and stuff like that.
Well, yes.
Now, bananas. Now, apparently... It's amazing what we find out when we go down these rabbit holes. Bananas are actually bad luck on boats.
Yeah, but there seems to be more of a practical reason behind this, though, doesn't there?
Well, there was a practical reason, but not one I've got. Because my initial response was, why is that? Because, the rinds slip, just chucking
they
the
chuck the skins around.
Yeah, and all the sailors were, slipping over or something, and the lads were like, oh, don't be so stupid, Kerry. So Richard actually came up with found out, shall I say. I said he didn't just come up with it. He went away, and this is what happens when we all get on Skype and talk about the show research. We all come up with stupid things, and then we find out the real reason. So, Richard, why don't you tell us?
For most of us that know, bananas do spoil rather quickly, and even today when you go, because you like to get the greener the banana, the better, because they last longer. But on board ships, this is not actually the case. You'll have bananas actually laying about for quite some time, and back in the days of sail, and this wasn't actually known, that they actually let off a poison gas once they start to deteriorate. And this has actually been put down, and they believe that thousands of sailors and over time have actually succumbed to the gas actually let off by bananas, which I believe is a carbon monoxide gas.
Oh, I thought methane.
Oh, methane, sorry. Yeah, sorry, yes, and methane. So that sort of, that does ring true, and even sort of going back to times when the slave trade was in sort of full swing, sort of going from Africa to the West Indies transporting slaves, they noticed that they would obviously use bananas as foodstuffs, but unfortunately for the slaves, they were also coming to. It wasn't that uncommon for the entire sort of for want of a better word, your commodity of the ship to actually die through poisoning, through the rotting bananas.
Not very good, right?
No, that's why it's bad luck.
There was another little problem, though, wasn't there, with bananas, Paul?
Yes.
Apparently so, yeah. I mean, you even get it now occasionally, not very often, though. Sometimes spiders would even creep into the boxes of bananas, and obviously they would crawl out in the dark conditions and have a wander about, and if someone was like flapping about and going, spider, sort of thing, the spider would bite them.
As you do. Now, I've got a little anecdote about this. My father, a little anecdote from my dad on this one. In the 1960s, he used to work in a warehouse, and it was a fruit warehouse, and the bananas, they used to have a dog that they used to send in there to get any nasties that crawled out the bananas that came over, like snakes and stuff. And this dog, he said, was like, it was so ratty by the time it finished. It had like one leg and one eye, and where it would like go in and tackle all the thing. But yeah, because back in the day, I know, right? But that's what they weren't as loving of animals then as they are now, as we are now. No. But they were. It served. It had a purpose. Go in there, kill the snakes. Whatever. But because you've got to look at how they transport things and how they process these things now. It's changed again. It's changed a hell of a lot to reduce the risk.
You still do get the odd spider, but it's not very often.
No.
No, I think
they in the media occasionally. Once or twice.
I think they use stuff like they do when they import furnitures from sort of like exotic countries. They sort of throw these sort of gas canisters in, don't they? Put them in sealed units and put gas canisters, which are obviously harmful for the spiders, but not for us, So.
Well, and I think knowledge, isn't it? Knowledge is power. Production has changed so much, and I would just like to add another little fact for you. Majority of bananas are actually flown in now and not coming in on cargo ships.
Well, quicker, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's quicker, and because of the nature of the fruit, it does deteriorate very quickly. So there's a little fact for you there.
Personally, I don't eat them, so they could go back to going by boat. It really wouldn't bother me.
Well, they actually reckon that the trading empire between Spain and the Caribbean in the 1700s, a lot of disappearing ships happened around then, and they put a lot of that down to the carrying of cargo of bananas.
Well, yes, I actually sort of picked up on this. I mean, sort of, some say it was for, sort of like the crew succumbing to the gases emitted from the bananas, or quite possibly, which also sounds quite sort of rings true, because as bananas were known to spoil so quickly, there was a lot of pressure for the ships to go quicker across the routes to actually get the bananas back, and probably a lot of mistakes and stuff happened that way, and a lot of ships floundered whilst transporting bananas, because it was quite a high sort of tensity job to do so.
Yeah, well, keep on listening, because once we've dealt with all the coincidences and superstitions of boats, then we are going to go into some of the ghost boats, ghost ships. So, anyway, boats have names, right?
Yes, they do.
Now, this is a whole new world, the naming of a boat.
And because you can't just call them big boat, little boat, medium boat, banana boat.
And once they're named, you very rarely will you change the name of the boat. And if you do, you have to go through. It's so ritualistic. That's what struck me regarding.
Sailors are very superstitious people.
Very superstitious.
The Navy are very superstitious anyway, I think, and that's where this all comes in, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a tough time. It's uncertain times, all going out to sea and stuff. And and you would have taken any sort of precaution you thought was necessary, and this would have sort of really ingrained itself into sort of Navy sort of life. And even today, in the Royal Navy, that's the only service you're allowed to grow beards, and that is not so much. And that is sort of more sort of born from an old superstition of sort of not shaving whilst on board ship. So they still actually carry that tradition over.
Well, this isn't just Navy. This is boats in particular. Like general boats. It's not just the Old Navy on the old naming of the boat. This is quite a broad span thing. Now, if you do want to rename your boat, there are ways you can do it, but you have to go through a renaming or a denaming ceremony first, and then you can rename it. And, again, this is very witchy, is all I'm going to say, is you basically write the current boat's name on a piece of paper, put it in a wooden box, then you have to burn the box, and then you have to scoop up the ashes and throw them into the sea, and then you can rename your boot. You can rename
This is
your
English,
boat.
not German.
I know, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that superstition goes back a long time. And apparently it's even mentioned in the novel Treasure Island.
Yeah.
Because Long John Silver, I'm assuming, I've not personally read the book, but I'm assuming he renamed his ship.
Well, can you do what he said in an accent? You've got to do it in a pirate accent.
No, I don't do accents. I'll leave those down to you, Kerry, because you're so good at that.
What a ship was christened, so let her stay.
Well done.
I know. I'm actually quite impressed with myself on that one. Now, there are tales that go on about captains who just decided to change the names without the ceremony and always seem to meet with a tragic end. And, you know, once a ship is christened, you have to kind of keep it because it goes into what's known, this is pure folklore, the Ledger of the Deep, who is maintained by Poseidon himself.
Yeah.
So, to change the name, you have to go through this ceremony because Poseidon's got to update his records, right?
Yeah,
well, yeah, I suppose he purveys everything that's sort of beneath the sea and presumably what floats on top of it. So, yeah, so he has to keep a track of everything.
Got to keep a track
and
of it. Mm-hmm.
If he comes across a name that isn't in the ledger, well, yeah, sink it.
Hence, if your name's not on the list, you ain't coming in.
Exactly. Exactly, Paul. Now, there is a more prosaic reason for this. Basically, back in the day, most boats were used to transport cargo. Now, each vessel would have a reputation because it would have a specified crew. This is more transporting of goods, I would say, rather than naval. Yeah, so, you know, you'd go to the port and it would be, you know, the Black Pearls come in and its cargo is, I don't know, bananas, for example. Do you know what I mean? And you'd get a reputation around the various ports in the world. And, you know, great stock was put on certain ships when they were due to come into port. So if you changed its name, all of a sudden changed its name, it kind of put a question on the reputation of the crew and the captain and the ship itself. So it could cause many problems. So that you really didn't.
Well, yeah, because I suppose at the time, I mean, sort of like the seafarers of the time, the people that worked on ships, it was quite transient, and you would wait at port for ships to come in and then go on and be employed for just the voyage or whatever. And I suppose if word got out that a ship had come in that's name had been changed that hadn't followed the correct protocol, nobody would want to work on it. So it wouldn't be very beneficial for the captain of that ship because people would just stay away from it.
It'd be a case of like, the Black Pearl's coming, put the crap on that one. And the Flying Dutchman has just pulled in. We'll give them all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, to get the best deals, you know, captains would have reputations of being the fastest captain on the seas, or, you know, they're really good at traversing storms or something like that. You get a reputation, you know, and you maintain that reputation, and your reputation is so tied to the boat that you sail. So it's understandable, isn't it? Now, if you did want to rechristen your boat, we've told you how you can go about it. But you then have to rechristen the boat, usually with alcohol. There's a theme here. I'm seeing a theme with alcohol through this.
Well, yeah, good old alcohol. Well, which is still done today when you think about it, isn't it? In ship launch.
Yeah, ship launch and that. But you offer some to the water, not just the boat. You have to give some to the water as well as the boat. So when you think about it, even now, when they launch a boat, it's always on the slipway, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so when they swing the champagne bottle, whatever alcohol that they're using, it smashes, and it will smash into the water as much as onto the boat. So it's sort of doing both at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you sort of think about that. That is quite a spiritual process, isn't it?
I mean, you know, honestly. It's a whole witchy poo thing, this is, I'm telling you now. And then you have to toast the vehicle. Like the vessel, sorry, vehicle. God, I'm on cars.
Close enough.
You have to toast it so you'll get drunk.
Yeah. We'll have a party,
We'll
basically.
all have a bit of a party to celebrate the birth of this new ship onto the sea, right? Or if you haven't got any alcohol, then you get your handy virgin, because every village has a virgin.
Not in Essex.
Not my one, I don't think.
You
Not in Essex. That's it.
and you get
We have trouble getting 3 wise men.
Well, this is true. And then you urinate. You get them to urinate over the bow of the boat. Could you imagine what conversation that would be? Hi, you're a virgin. Yeah, I need you to do me a favour. Haven't got any alcohol, so I need you to kind of like go and have a wee on the bow of my boat. You know?
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh, you pervert. Can you imagine today if someone said that? That would be so funny. No.
I think it'd take a long time to find a virgin,
I think yeah, you know.
especially in Essex.
Depends on the age. Depends on the age is all I would go.
You might
Now-
have to go outside the region, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Move on.
Yes, quickly move on. So there are many other things that, you know, they were very superstitious about. So, like, the captain would have to confess his sins and beg the gods and goddesses of the sea for forgiveness before he sailed the ship. It's almost like confession to the gods of the sea. Right, you would
say you can see the confessional, which is a way of absolving your sins. So makes perfect sense. And
never do it on a Friday. Never launch your boat on a Friday.
no, it's never even set sail on a Friday either.
Well, the reason for the Friday the 13th, you'd never ever call. The reason for the Friday thing is quite important because it's linked into Christianity, believe it or not. Because wasn't it Judas who betrayed Jesus on a Friday? Or was he on the cross on a Friday?
I think Jesus was crucified on a Friday, wasn't he? Or
That's sort of one of the theories, isn't it, of why we've got Friday the 13th, because there was 13 people around Jesus on the Last Supper. Obviously, Judas was the 13th one, apparently, and he was the one that stabbed everyone in the back. But then also you've got the whole Friday the 13th when the Knights Templar was absolved or whatever it was.
Yeah, dissolved.
And, that no one really knows for sure, but they're the two top theories at least. So it could have tied into why, you don't have a ceremony on a Friday because it could lead to bad luck.
And also, doesn't Friday link to the god Thor?
No, because Thor's Thursday.
Is he Thursday? Oh,
yes,
okay,
and,
not that theory
Hence Thor's Day.
Yeah, and that was also an unlucky day to actually sort of set sail because Thor, with his warhammer, being the god of thunder and thunder, tempests, storms, was also thought of as not a au fait day to actually go out on.
Friday is Freya, isn't it, I think?
Yeah.
Oh, because she's a woman, maybe that's all it was.
Yeah, it's bad luck.
But the one underneath this amuses me. You should never rename your boat Black Pig on a Friday the 13th.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
Right, you have to circle the boat twice against the sun or counterclockwise to awaken the demons, then with the sun or clockwise to drive the demons away.
I think that's very reminiscent of what our legend is today about going around churches clockwise 10 times to wake demons up.
Oh, yes, you do get that in a lot of churches, don't they? If you sort of run round, especially sort of, it's been more sort of witchified and even further with, because these sort of things at Halloween, isn't it? If you run around.
Yeah, didn't they, years ago, when they were dismantling boats, they made some buildings in villages, and I'm assuming churches would have been included in that. So maybe that's sort of where it links to the Navy.
Yeah, I mean,
if they're making churches out of the ships that they've dismantled, maybe that's where we get the whole circling the churches as well.
And
I
ships
think-
and
Sorry, I think this goes back further than that. I think this goes back more to the pagan roots where they used to worship the woods and the imps and the fairies and stuff in the woods, and you'd obviously cut down a tree to make your ship. So you're taking the well, for argument's sake, we call them fairies, the fairy folk, away and taking them onto sea. So you're having to appease them all the time because they're still linked to the wood. I think it's more to do with that than anything else. But it shows you the tradition that's come through, doesn't it? You know, so, the counterclockwise, clockwise thing. And it becomes linked, and then you can see where a superstition from the land evolves onto the sea, that then evolves back onto the land. You know, how many pubs do you see? Like, it's made, the beams are from the ship that the smuggler used. Wasn't that one of the ones we came up with last week?
You look at, especially during the Tudor times, there was a huge dismantling of the Navy. They really cut down the size. And you look at Tudor houses, even today, they have that particular style. There's a lot of wood in them. You know, you see the whitewashed facades with the cross beams and inside. And those were all made from the abundance of ship material that was left over.
It's ironic, really, isn't it? Because then they had to rebuild the Navy for when Elizabeth came in, because we then had a threat from the sea. Ironic. Now, if the boat is on land, you circle her on foot, barefoot, though. Again, back to pagan roots, you know, barefoot grounding, keep it, you know, don't wear sandals so you're as near as you can be to the ground. And if the boat's afloat, then you circle her in a rowboat, obviously. Oars or paddles only, as the gods and goddesses get offended by outboat motors, apparently. Outboard motors. God, I can't get my words right today.
Yeah, pure laziness.
Yeah, that's right.
I can understand why they get annoyed with
that. Now, this is all the renaming sort of things that you do. Is like you have to burn the old name board and scatter the ashes on the sea, wash away the old name, figuratively speaking, by splashing the bow of the boat. And, so all sorts of things. Breaking a bottle of the most expensive wine or single malt scotch over the bow. They don't like cheap booze, is all I'm saying.
No.
They don't like cheap. There ain't no Lambrini going on the back of your boat. You've got to use quality stuff.
Lambrusco or whatever,
I think, you know, going back to this sort of era, you know, we had the best British Navy. Well, we had the best Navy in the world. And I think it's just down to their traditions and stuff, and they were very...
I think that's questionable.
Well, no.
Did we just have the best sailors, or did we have the best boats?
No, we had the best boats because we had the best Navy. but you know, they certainly had obviously all their traditions and stuff, and they did have relatively good luck. You know, and plenty of countries around the world just wish they had a Navy like ours.
I think the Spanish had a pretty good Navy too back in the day.
Yeah, but we beat them. If you want to see that Navy now, you know, you've got to travel around.
I knew you was going to say that. I knew you was going to say that. Anyway, superstitions about the names of vessels. 7 letters in a name will ensure good luck, as will 3 of the letter A. So you've got to have 7 letters, 3 of them with the letter A.
Yeah.
Okay.
You try. How many words does that make? It's limiting, right?
Yeah. No, I'm not going to get the dictionary. That's too far the other side of the room. Yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head. We're just using 7 letters, 3 of them being an A.
Yeah, I know, right? So you have to launch a banana.
Yeah, bananas.
I know that's more
lots
than
of HMS bananas.
I know that's more than 7 letters. Right, bad luck is certain if you don't name her before you launch her.
Right, so then, I can see that.
You have to have the naming ceremony.
Well, they usually, and even now, when they commission a boat to be built, they will have a name in mind, or they'll have a name for the boat.
Oh, yeah, of course they will.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can't name your vessel after a snake or a reptile for some reason. Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. I'm sort of thinking of the sort of old Navy ships I sort of know about through my history and stuff, and I can't think of any off the top of my head. I think there was an HMS Viper at one point, but don't quote me on that. Carry on, dear.
I don't know. I don't know. Don't ask me.
You shouldn't be naming a vessel after one that's sunk either.
No.
Which makes me a little bit concerned about Titanic too.
Yes. Yes. I wonder how they're going to get around that.
Yeah.
Or are they just not caring now?
I don't. No, I think it's just
probably 6 of one and half dozen of the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what can you call a replica of a ship if you don't call it by its original name and just put the 2 at the end?
And it's a massive selling point on Titanic too, isn't it? It's like a replica of the Titanic.
That's right.
Isn't it being built in Australia?
I don't know.
Yes, I think it's an Australian venture that sort of put the whole idea together. But
maybe that's how they're going to get around it, because it isn't actually a British tradition then.
Yeah, might do.
Argue that point that we kind of colonised Australia in the first place.
Yeah, but they're still a nation of their own, so they've got their own.
Are they still part of the Commonwealth?
Yeah, stop splitting hairs.
Sorry.
You're talking about my adoptive nation there.
I know. I'm just pointing out a few things that they should have thought about if they're going to call it the Titanic. They might get around it by calling, I don't know, the Titanium or Titania or something. You know what I mean? Or something different.
Just from the sale,
Britannic. Or Titan.
Yeah, but the Britannic sank as well.
Oh.
That was the sister ship to the Titanic, but
anyway, just saying, anybody who's thinking of going on that trip shouldn't really gas it, was that?
Yeah, and take your armbands.
You shouldn't name it after a storm, like hurricane, gale, cyclone, you know, all those kind of things. You shouldn't name a vessel after those. Although, again, I'm sure there probably has been.
Well, there's a tradition of naming hurricanes and typhoons and storms and whatever, so, but...
No, that's a modern thing.
Yeah.
That's actually a very modern thing. I was thinking more like, hey, you don't see HMS Hurricane or HMS Gale or...
Oh, right, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I understand, yeah.
So, and in your research as well, it does say you shouldn't be naming them after a cataclysm as well. So, I just... The examples they've given are just absolutely awful. You know, you can imagine like HMS Quake or HMS Eruption, HMS Big Bang.
I love that one, the Big Bang Theory. HMS Big Bang. Or creatures of the deep, folklore of creatures of the deep, like the Kraken or, the sea serpent, they call the serpent, things like that, which is a topic I'm sure we'll come to in the future, because Paul does love a bit of cryptozoology, don't you, lovey?
Yes, I do. Yeah, they're awesome.
We'll have some of that later.
Mm-hmm. And you can't name them either after an evil character. So, like Judas, you can't name it Judas. You're Pontius Pilate or Brutus or...
Oh, when you sort of... right, yeah.
I know, right? Can't do that. You can't... the rules and regulations regarding what you can and can't name a ship is phenomenal, really. You can't give a vessel a high and mighty name, like Sovereign of the Seas, Audacious. I'm sure there was a HMS Audacious, though.
I think there's a Sovereign of the Sea as well, but I think that these are sort of merchant vessels, some of these. I mean, whether there's a difference between merchant vessels and sort of naval vessels, sort of military vessels, I don't know. There probably is sort of some sort of distinction between the both. I'm not too sure.
What about cruise ships? They must come under this as well.
Well, but cruise ships are relatively modern. It's a relatively modern thing, because you think back in the day, all ships were working ships. You'd take passengers to and from somewhere. You wouldn't cruise aimlessly around and go back to port. I mean, that is a relatively new idea. But and plus, the ship's crews would have been interchangeable. They would have worked on merchantmen during peacetime, and when war came, they would have been sort of called up to go on board the naval vessels. So they were quite sort of diverse. But I think a lot of these traditions, they're not still held fast today.
I think this is a tradition.
What we're talking about.
Are old. These are like 1700s.
The age of these are sort of like the post sort of steam age, the age of sail, when sailing was as the word said, sailing, and it was a skill.
Yeah. This is sort of like when they were built out of wood, really, because we talked about the sprites of the spirits of the, the forest being brought onto the seas, and apparently if you poured wine or liquor or beer onto the anchor and bowsprit, which, we've kind of well anointed this ship with alcohol so far, haven't we?
Well, no wonder these sprites always get a bit out of hand.
It's hardly surprising.
Yeah.
The spirit will desire to return to the pool and drink the fruit of the land again, so it safely delivers the sailors, right?
Oh, so you're connecting the boat to the land. I see, you're making that sort of connection.
Yeah,
Right.
You're giving them hope that they're going to come back. And I suppose where it goes into the water, it sort of links it back that way as well. So these spirits are very clever because they can, or these fairies are very clever because they know where their port is as well. It's very
well, yes.
very
I mean,
involved,
because
everybody.
you think,
Yeah, because they smell the drink.
it's quite sort of funny. There's a lot of sort of like symbolism in this, because when you launch a boat, you launch it from a birth. And what do women do when they have babies? They give birth.
You birth a boat. Now, you shouldn't build your ship out of wood from different trees and forests, so you can't mix your birch with your oak or your birch with your willow. You're not allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Not that I know many trees that are built out of willow, but there you go. I think the wood of preference was oak, wasn't it?
Particularly for naval ships, they were entirely oak vessels. Yeah.
This has got nothing to do with the wood itself. This is all to do with the tree spirits. Because if they're different woods, they come from different woods, then the spirits will end up fighting, which doesn't...
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm. They'll have a little argument because they come from different woods.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I know, right? So cute.
Yeah.
So cute. Now, birds. Let's go right to the top and think about birds. Now, many superstitions surround birds in regard to sailors. Albatrosses are both a sign of good luck and bad luck.
Oh, yeah, the poor albatross. Yeah, he seems to be quite. It all depends on how you look at it, isn't it? Of whether you interpret it as being good luck, bad luck. So at least you have a choice with an albatross.
You do have a choice.
Yeah.
It's the main belief is that the albatross actually carries the souls of dead sailors. Oh my God, can't get my teeth in today. I haven't been on the rum, I promise you. The souls of the dead sailors. So that's the main belief with the albatross. Sighting one flying overhead. Now, bearing in mind, albatrosses don't flap their wings per se, do they? They sort of...
No, they just ride on the thermals.
Yeah, they glide on thermals, that's the word, isn't it? The air currents and stuff like that. Now, if you're sighting one flying overhead, it was considered good luck because the albatross, carrying the mariner's soul, is come to protect them from harm and bring the necessary winds to the sails.
Ooh. Oh, so they didn't have to rely on purely baked beans then?
No. You tried to rely on a good old albatross flying by you. Now, which kind of makes sense because they fly on thermals, as we've said, like the air currents and stuff. So if you've got an albatross flying in, hovering over your boat, flying in the same direction, you set your sails right and you're going in the right way, as it were. Now, some sailors believed an albatross sighting would be a bad omen, as it meant that somebody was supposed to die in the near future. So that's your two-way thing. You could either go, oh, yeah, it's great luck because my thermals are all right, my sails are set, blah, blah, blah.
We're going in the right direction.
Yeah, or oh, dear, someone's going to die.
Yeah.
It all depends what side of bed you get out in the morning. So if you're feeling a bit doom and gloom, think, we're all going to die today. Or, yay, we're going to hit landfall and any time soon.
You shouldn't kill one, though. Whatever you do, you don't shoot or kill an albatross, as that promised to curse the entire crew, and you're all doomed, basically. So whatever you thought about the albatross, one thing you can't do is kill it.
Yeah.
Right.
And cormorants are the other one. And their souls lost at sea.
Right. Right.
Yeah, they're supposed to be souls that are lost at sea, guiding the living to safety. So again, there's this theme, isn't there, of birds actually, still linked to the sea. You know, these are all linked to, even seagulls, they're supposed to be reincarnated souls of sailors or attached to the bird, representing these people that have been lost at sea that are then guiding the sailors who are living and still living and breathing on the seas to safety, you know, and depending on, like, you know, your point of view, particularly with the albatross. So they even, like, birds have like meaning as well, you know, to them. Now, it's well known that they used to keep animals on board for food.
Food, yes.
Right?
It is.
And going back to the black pig, that you shouldn't really call your ship. You shouldn't take a pig either. Pigs were considered unlucky. You never use the word pig at sea, so you wouldn't go, "Oh, you naughty sea pig." You sea dog, but not a sea pig.
Yeah, the dog's all right, yeah, but pig, no.
No. Actually, in Yorkshire, you weren't even allowed to use the name on land.
Right.
Right, apparently. Apparently so, right? Who knew? The reason behind this is lost in the mysteries of time, to be fair, but it kind of comes from the belief that pigs were sacred to the gods of the seas, and taking their name in vain was to anger them, right? And if you slaughtered a pig at sea, it guaranteed a vicious storm, so you didn't slaughter your pig at sea.
Well, I think you'll hedge your bets and not bother taking a pig at all.
No. I think you could.
I know
I think you could
goats
carry.
were quite.
Yeah, goats were, because they gave you milk as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
But a pig, no, not really. They used to store it in salt and carry it on board dead to eat, but not actually to alive-o.
I think that's your cockles and mussels, dear.
Well, still the sea.
Yeah, true.
There is a Bible story where Jesus chased an evil spirit out of a man into a herd of pigs and then drowned them. So that also might be what's behind this. But again, you've got like beliefs, like land belief systems, religious, cultural belief systems, sort of carrying over onto the sea, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's sort of just the natural progression, isn't it? And the sailors of the time, like we sort of touched upon earlier, would have taken anything they could as good luck. And even these, what we would consider quite bizarre, these would have been taken very seriously at the time.
Very much so. Now, the last on the list, well, I say last on the list, we found out a hell of a lot more, but we're running out of time, would you believe, already? Now, rats. Rats are called longtails.
Oh, yeah.
Now, any ship will have rats, but back in the day, this is not so much nowadays, but back in the day, all ships would generally have, you know, rats on them because of the cargo that they're carrying. It's just far too much. I mean, when you look at the Black Death, you know, we talked about this in a show we did on plagues, you know, which was for another channel. The reason it managed to get into the UK was by the ports, wasn't it? It was coming in on the ports on the rats. And that was the one way it was coming over. So rats are called longtails. They are thought to be able to sense disaster. So if rodents were seen abandoning a ship, pretty damn sure that the craft was sinking. But that's just common sense, right?
Well, you know, it does make you think, because even today it's actually quite well known that animals can detect sort of coming earthquakes and volcanic eruptions and will tend to sort of migrate away from these sort of events before they happen. I mean, could this be put down to rats as well before you set sail? Who knows?
Who knows, indeed. But they would often have a cat on board, which are considered good luck, because obviously they kept down the rat population, which kept the, you know, your cargo a bit safer. Because obviously, if you're transporting grain, rats love a bit of grain, don't they? Love anything, to be fair, rats. So you know, you would have a cat on board, and that's why cats are considered lucky.
Yeah,
awesome.
Can't beat a cat. Yeah, and they're the best rodent control you can get. Pest control you can get as a cat.
Well, quite frankly, they do kind of like to bring you presents, even like house cats. Yeah. They love it, don't they?
Always on the doorstep when you step out first thing in the morning.
Now we have got a couple of minutes left of the first half. I kind of want to jump to women because you boys, this is the bit that got you two most excited in our little conversation. Because a naked woman aboard, because it's always been the thought that women aren't allowed on board, right? They're bad luck. Us girlies, we're bad luck.
They distract blokes, and when they get talking, it's like hard to get a word in edgeways.
Well, you can't get a word in edgeways, can you?
Yeah.
I don't know where you get that idea from.
Can't imagine.
But it's good to hear that women were allowed on ship, but naked.
But naked, yeah.
And I think that's a fair compromise, to be quite honest, you, Paul.
Well, if there's supposed to be a distraction for the sailors, being naked is going to be a bit more of a distraction than if they were dressed, right?
Well, they had to try. Yeah, I suppose once all the rats had left, they say, "Well, we've got naked women, lads." But okay, I'm on board for that.
Now, when women were allowed to join the Navy, right? They said it's okay to have women aboard, but they were to be dressed and there to fight alongside the men. So basically, women are allowed on ship as long as they take on the same role as men, right?
Yeah, now,
which is fair enough.
This actually caused quite a bit of a problem, a mass mutiny almost, because the belief is that anybody with any lady with clothes on upset Neptune or Poseidon, depending on what everyone.
Yeah.
He likes
never thought of it that way.
He likes naked ladies. So if there was a big storm, the poor old in the early days, I can imagine all the sailors going, "Get her clothes off! For God's sake, Neptune's upset. Get her clothes off."
Oh dear, it's one of my.
Sorry.
One of my biggest regrets. I very nearly did join the Navy. Oh, what did I throw away there?
This is one of the reasons why in the olden days when women were considered unlucky, they used to make, like the bow, they'd put there's a word for it, I can't remember what the word is. The
figurehead.
The figurehead on the end of the boat was always generally a bare-breasted woman, and this is why.
A very busty woman, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, because he liked big boobs. He didn't just like any old boobs. He liked a well-breasted lady. Does Neptune? So if he saw a good pair of boobs, he would make sure that you had good passage, basically.
Yes.
Okay. It's all down to the breasts, my lovelies. Because her bare breast shamed the stormy seas into calm, and her open eyes, they're always open-eyed as well, guided the seamen to safety. Oh, bless. Oh, dear. It does make me chuckle. Anyway, on that note...
I think so I think we need to go and take a cold shower.
I think the boys need to go and take a cold shower. I think they do. We'll be back very quickly, just after this.
Hello, Harry Price here. If there's nothing me and my friends enjoy more here on the other side, it is to sit back and relax and listen to the Paranormal Concept Show, right here on the PAUK Radio Network. Broadcasting a plethora of interesting and informative content for all your paranormal needs. Find them across social media to keep up to date with forthcoming shows and all their other adventures. Hello, is there anybody there?
And welcome back to the Paranormal Concept Show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And before the break, we were talking about superstitions regarding some of the sailors and surrounding the boats. Now, one of the things that's also very prevalent, and we did a bit of a whistle-stop tour, there was a lot more we didn't cover, but you got the general gist that they're a superstitious lot. No more superstitious than when you find a ghost ship. These tales of ghost ships are everywhere. They still happen to this day, don't they? There's been one not so long ago in Japan that was found.
Yeah. I mean, not only do they just find they find ghost ships, but actually people have witnessed apparitions of ghost ships, and one of which they claim is the Flying Dutchman.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was, but there was someone quite famous. It might have even been one of the royal family.
Oh yes, that was the present Queen's grandfather, George V. He actually claimed to have witnessed the Flying Dutchman because all the royal family back then, they would have gone into the Royal Navy and served, and and he's probably one of the most famous people to have actually claimed to have seen it off the Cape of Good Hope, I believe, off South Africa. I think is where it's.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Is its usual haunt, but it's quite an interesting little anecdote there.
Well, the Flying Dutchman is probably the most well-known story, particularly of a sailing ship and an old-fashioned wooden type sailing ship that's seen. Whole myths and legends surround the Flying Dutchman in its own right. But it's had a renewed interest thanks to Pirates of the Caribbean. You know, a lot of this is all referenced in Pirates of the Caribbean. So we had a little look because we wanted to know where it actually came from in the first place. Is there any basis of truth in the Flying Dutchman? Now, there are several characters, actually. I say several. There's probably about 2 or 3 of where the legend actually came from originally. The first one is actually a Dutch sea captain called Bernard Folk.
Folk? Yeah, that's folk, yeah.
I kind of don't want to say how else I would say that, but...
No, I think,
We'll just call him good old Bernard.
No, I think it's folk as opposed to...
Yeah.
With the U in
it. Yeah. We'll just call him Bernard for the sake of this. Safest.
Good move.
He was actually employed, he was a captain, and he was employed by the Dutch East India Company. And he was actually renowned in his own right for, you know, we talked earlier on about transporting goods at speed.
Yeah.
He was actually really renowned for his fast transits between the Dutch Republic and Java.
Right.
And his
trip, that's quite a route as well.
It is quite a route, and it actually went under the Cape of Good Hope, funnily enough, what you were talking about earlier, with the royal family sighting. Now, the reason he was able to go so fast is that they think, and I don't know what a yard arm is, but he's supposed to have used iron yard arms instead of wood.
Oh, right.
I think a yard arm is the horizontal bit on the sail.
You know, the wood
that goes across the top of the sail. I think that was the yard arm.
Oh. Well, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a yard arm is. I didn't know that. Yeah. So he could go quicker and faster because he's got more strength in his ship, basically. Right. Now, his fastest logged time for the trip was in 1678. But he was born in 1600s, which indicates he was like 78 years old when he did that. That's either not true or, you know, he was a pretty damn fine, healthy individual.
Don't you love 17th century record keeping?
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant, isn't it?
Although I've looked at some 16th, 17th century records, and when we was looking at smugglers last week, if you missed that show, you can catch it on www.paranormalconcept.com, or scroll back down on the Podbean uploads, and you can have a listen to the show there. Now, oh dear. Where was I thinking that? I went off on a tangent, didn't I? When we looked at that, it's one of these. Did he? Didn't he? Who knows? When you look at records, they're so hard to read. To be fair, the writing is so scrawly or so tiny, and
they should have been doctors.
They probably were as well as record keepers. To be fair. Now, this guy Bernard was said to have been lost at sea, but we have insufficient biographical information, and we don't know where or when. Which again is a very common problem for this age, you know, this era. Yeah. Is the record keeping. A lot of it is very deteriorated, not kept properly, wasn't kept up to date at the time properly, or has got lost in history. You've got to remember a lot of records offices and records got destroyed in the World Wars. You know, there's a lot missing out of the records, quite frankly, so they don't know. It said he was lost at sea. It kind of fits the legend nicely, don't it?
Absolutely. I think they did make it fit sometimes.
I think it's the case they've got this story of the Flying Dutchman, which, and they've just gone back in the archives to just pick something that vaguely might sort of explain it. And I think this is one of these sort of stories that have come up that somebody's put forward.
Well, in nautical legends, it is said that Bernard was a man who sank during a stormy rounding of the Cape of Good Hope. So it does fit, but there are no records of that confirming it. And there is certainly no records of any oaths he may have sworn, cursing or whatever, before he sank. So, again, that's all conjecture. It's all assumption. Yeah. And basically, he died a full century before Barrington, who wrote it, actually used the phrase in print. So it could be that Barrington had heard legends and tales about Bernard.
Heard a few rumours.
Maybe it was a story that ignited his imagination, and he then wrote about it and embellished a little, maybe. Who knows?
I think, the Cape of Good Hope had a reputation anyway. I mean, there's many a ship gone down around there. It would have been a well-known sort of notorious stretch of water. So, it could have been any story they could have picked, And the amount of people that have died going round it is countless.
Well, even if you look at the film, the fact that the Flying Dutchman is faster than any ship. It can overtake any ship on the high seas. Yeah. It is a strong ship. It's well captained. When you look at the actual ship and the capabilities of the ship, it kind of fits with Bernard.
Well, yeah.
So it does make that perfect story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the first time the first time they used the phrase "the Flying Dutchman," it was used in print, obviously, in 1790. By the Irish petty thief George Barrington.
Yeah.
And that's the guy obviously you're talking about. He was sent to Australia for his crimes, but after he got his freedom a few years later, he published the book A Voyage to New South Wales, in which he told of a tale of two Dutch ships, one of which sank in a storm off the Cape of Good Hope, with the loss of all hands. And the other ship returned okay to England. But upon its next trip, doing the same route, a big storm occurred.
Sorry.
Yeah, a big storm occurred, and they saw the former companion vessel alongside just for a brief second. Barrington, in the book, never actually gave any names or ships or dates or anything of the ships or dates, but they always referred to the ghost ship as the Flying Dutchman, and that was the first time it was used in print.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean to say that it hadn't been spoken about in those terms before,
Yeah.
It's one of those, isn't it? It's, like I say, it's perfect fodder for a story, a bit like when we was talking about fact and
absolutely. I
fiction.
mean, it took him 5 years to do this book, from 1790 when he was on his way to Australia to 95 when he published it.
Yeah.
Again, as sort of Kerry alluded to, when we done our Facts from Fiction or Fiction show, I mean, you take roughly true historic events and you overlay a fictitious story on it.
Yeah.
And this does seem to be heading that way.
It feels
like
way,
movie
doesn't it?
Titanic.
Yeah.
Jack, I won't let go. Anyway, that's a whole different story. Now, there is another contender for the title, Henrik van der Decken.
Yeah.
Ooh, good old Henrik.
Good old Hendrik, sorry. He was another Dutch East Indian Company captain, but allegedly was lost at sea in 1641. Now, some sources say 1680. There's a big difference in records there, isn't there? 1641 or 1680? Which one? Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, the other guy that you was talking about, Bernard Folk, he didn't he log the trip in 1678 for the fastest trip?
Yeah.
And then this other guy, 1680. Maybe they disappeared together.
Ooh, there's a conspiracy theory right there waiting to happen.
Oh, yeah. What do you reckon is foul play?
Or maybe they're one and the same person.
Well, there's that as well. going to go with the gay relationship.
The only problem we have is the Dutch East Indian Company's Cape Colony, which is in South Africa, was actually only founded in 1652.
Okay.
So the Dutch East Indian bit that he was supposed to be sailing from was founded later than when he was supposed to have been lost at sea to some sources. So and it doesn't have any mention of him either in the Cape Colony Company's records.
Maybe it was just a case of, when they were all reporting this sort of stuff, it was like, oh, yeah, like we do, when we refer to things years ago, it's like, oh, the other week I done this. And it wasn't the other week, it was like 3 years down the line.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, because there's quite a few times. I was only talking about that the other day, and it was probably a conversation we had weeks ago. I do that.
Yeah,
but
we'll do it.
But lots of captains were lost in those days. I mean, it was quite a common thing,
Oh, yeah.
And the only reason that Van der Decken, his name just gets me every time, is actually because British novelist Frederick Marryat wrote a novel in 1839, and he actually called the novel The Phantom Ship, named his fictional captain Philip Van der Decken. Right? I know it's a bit different from Hendrik, but he actually, he based this, and it involves encounters with the Flying Dutchman ship, and according to aged seafarers aboard, it was also captained allegedly by Van der Decken.
Oh.
Oh, so it wasn't captained by a big squid-headed person.
No, it was a recognisable person. But this is the story that Marryat had written, so it's pure fiction.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic sort of, the people that wanted to read fiction back then are the same sorts of people that want to read it now. You enjoy a good sort of ghost story, don't you, and stuff like that. So, yeah, supply and demand. You give the public what they want.
This is true. It's pure fiction. And, excuse me, just have a little choke on my drink. Sorry about that, everybody.
Oh, we dear, we need you.
I keep taking it down the wrong hole. Oh, no, there's a rude moment. It was actually written...
don't even go there.
Sorry. Yeah. It was nearly written. It was written nearly even half a century after other authors had introduced the term the Flying Dutchman. So you can't really count it, because it's almost like the story's a great story. He thought he'd write about it, but other people had done so beforehand. Like Paul had said, when in 1790 George Barrington had written about it. So you know what I mean. So it's like sort of taken it. It's like Andrew Lloyd Webber doing the musical on Phantom of the Opera. Yet that was based on a novel that was written 100 years before, 150 odd years before, by that French guy. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to look at things like that.
So it does go to show
an opera written. There was an opera written about it.
There was an opera written about it. Very good. Yes, there was.
And it was Wagner.
Wagner. Yeah.
In German one.
Yes, it was.
How do you pronounce that, Kerry?
I knew you were going to say that. Oh, God. De Vliegende Hollander. I went French. I wasn't meant to go French. I was supposed to go German.
No, it's German. And it is,
Hollander, Holland, Dutch, you can see.
It is, it's German.
The Flying Dutchman, yeah.
Well, as close as they can get to it.
Yeah.
The flying Hollander. Yeah. Man from Holland.
This was in 1840. Now, again, it's quite a heavy-going opera. I would just like to point that out.
I would have thought German ones would be quite...
Oh, yeah, especially Wagner's sort of operas, they are quite...
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are very...
They are quite...
going, I would say. It's not my favourite. Yeah, it's not my favourite composer, I put it that way.
If it's anything like Ride of the Valkyries, yeah, you'll get the gist of it, I suppose.
Now, the Dutchman is actually unnamed in the opera. It's just referred to as the Capitano. I don't even know what language that is. But
Spanish now, I think.
No, it was the Dutchman that was unnamed in the opera. Not the ship. It was just Dutchman. Who the Dutchman was.
Yeah, Verbal
was unnamed
chastisement
in
by
the
Paul
opera.
there. Trying to go off.
So
into
I'm assuming that would have been the captain.
Yeah, he put ports in a storm in Norway. Sorry, I'm giggling there because I've gone around the whole of Europe with this poor old German opera.
Is it Norway now, is he?
Yeah, now he puts in a storm in Norway. Anyway, he grapples to the ship of Captain de Land. The Dutchman reveals to the captain that years ago there was a curse during a storm, swearing to Satan that he would round the Cape of Good Hope, even if he had to keep trying until doomsday. Satan obviously took him at his word, because Satan loves a bit of a deal, doesn't he? And there's a show. Deals with the devil. We've got to do that one at some point. And cursed him to never make port until he found a woman who would love him until she died. And then, of course, he did find somebody who loved him till he died, but he didn't believe it, and then she killed herself, and then the Dutchman are seeing the last things is the Dutchman ascending to heaven, and obviously the Flying Dutchman, right?
So that is quite reminiscent of what the underlying story of the Flying Dutchman in Pirates of the Caribbean, because you had the captain of the Flying Dutchman as Davy Jones, and he was in love with was it Sea? Not Cyprus.
Oh,
what's
the witchy woman.
Yeah, she was a god, wasn't she?
She was. She was a goddess. Yeah. Oh God.
No, Caprice. That's something else.
Somebody Google that while we're
it is something like that.
Can all picture her. Can't think of the woman's name.
I'll shout it out randomly in a minute.
Go on, in a minute when it occurs to us when we talk about something else. What is interesting is the Cape of Good Hope, which has been referred to through all of these stories, is infamous. Is not the one that's renowned for stormy seas. That's actually Cape Horn, which is the tip of South America, not the Cape of Good Hope, which is South Africa. There's like 150 kilometres difference in this.
Well, I think it's a bit more than that, but I'll take it at that, yeah.
Oh, okay, don't argue with me about distance now, my God.
Well, 150
kilometres. Yeah.
That's only about 100 miles.
Calypso, thank you.
Calypso.
Thank you.
It.
Oh, right.
That's what
I remembered that. It just popped in.
It just popped into your little head, did it? We should know it. It's one of my favourite films.
Yeah, now it's gone again.
Well, anyway, that's what it says in my research.
Okay.
I can't argue it because you know what my geography is like. I shrink the world down to fit my world, not the other way around.
It's just,
somewhere near Canvey, I would have
thought. Sort of, it's just north of Clacton, thinking about it.
By the way, everybody, just a reference, geography is definitely not my strong point, and it gets brought up on a regular basis. It could have been like 150,000 miles, and I've read it as something completely different.
Yeah, probably a lot closer.
Now, there are plenty of other stories about this. Plenty of other authors have mentioned the Flying Dutchman, Sir Walter Scott even, Irving, Washington, loads and loads of people. Hundreds of eyewitness accounts around the time of Marryat's book and ever since. There is a gap, which is 100 years between the first captain that we talked about, Bernard, and Barrington's first record of the Flying Dutchman. There is a sort of like folklore gap. That doesn't mean that there wasn't eyewitness accounts. It just means we haven't found any record of them. But there is a documented gap, as it were.
Or that is the time span the legend took to ferment, for it to get into any sort of legible sense for a fiction writer to come and grab hold of it and sort of use it in a novel.
Exactly. But by the time Barrington wrote that, originally, the actual Dutch East Indian Company was actually, going downhill. It was declining and shutting. So think of that 100 years of trading that you've got going on and multiple captains, all different tales and traditions, and God knows what else had come out of that fermenting pot of superstition, as we've already seen in the first half of the show. It's like there's a plethora of folklore and superstition regarding this. So if you had access to all of that, who knows, right?
There's certainly a sense of this, though, and the same with a lot of these sort of legendary tales. There's a touch of the morality tale about it as well, isn't there?
Mm.
You've got somebody who's really good at something who is brought down by the elements, the fastest sea captain, perhaps, he's getting too good, and then Mother Nature comes and acts its revenge. I mean, tales like this span the course of history, don't they?
Mm-hmm. And, it's the perfect ghost story if you're a sailor.
Mm.
It really is, isn't it? If you're at sea and you're scared and you're a newer crew and, watch out.
Yeah, I can just imagine,
you can imagine it, can't you?
All the older sailors and the old hands, and when they get, a couple of new lads aboard, they say, beware of the Flying Dutchman. You'll see it, Yeah.
Now,
you know what's going.
Oh, you certainly do. Now, I have to give a shout out to Brian Dunning from Skeptoid for a lot of that information. He does phenomenal work over there. So if you want some really good researched background information, go check him out over on Skeptoid, because that's where a lot of that information came from. So thank you very much, Brian. And I did have permission to use that information. So thank you very much, Brian, my friend. And also, I want to give a shout out to Eddie Brazil as well, because he gave me a lot of information on the Flying Dutchman too.
Oh, right.
I think as well you should give a shout out, because obviously he's asked for one. Andy Mercer.
Oh, I love you, Andy Mercer. He's our producer. He does our work every week, and we forget every week to say thank you. Very naughty. We're going to have him on the show.
He wanted a shout out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to get him out of the dungeon and have him on a show.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's about time we dragged him out. Dragged him onto the Paranormal Concept Show, away from his other co-hosts, Mr. Steve Ward.
Oh yeah. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve. Yeah, we're going to nick Andy for a
put him
show.
on a better show, I think.
Oh dear. We're still relatively new on this network. Steady on.
The other hosts on the show. Anyway, let's move on quickly before we really get ourselves into trouble. Quickly. We can't talk about ghost ships without looking at one of the most infamous cases around, which I think is one of the stories that a lot of us in the paranormal world sort of have come across, which is the Mary Celeste, isn't it?
Yeah, good on Mary Celeste. I mean, iconic story, really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And unlike the sort of Flying Dutchman, this is very well documented, and sort of more than likely it is based on fact.
Or is it? We shall see when we go into this little tale. Paul, do you want to lead the forum on this one?
Not really, but I'll give it a go. The ship Mary Celeste, it was a New York ship, but Canadian built, 100-foot brigantine of 282 tons, and obviously it was registered to New York. The owners were James H. Winchester, Sylvester Goodwin, and Benjamin Spooner Briggs. Mm-hmm. I think that's right.
Yeah.
So Spooner Briggs was quite well known in Gibraltar. So obviously it went sailing around there quite a lot. And he was a bit of a Bible basher. And I'll let you carry on, Kerry.
All right. He didn't like to drink. He was a staunch abstainer from alcohol. Wouldn't have none of that. So he was very well respected in regards to, if you're going to have someone look after your ship, then you kind of want the best captain you can get. And because of his way of living, he was, particularly when you look at the previous, looking at rum, he didn't like none of that. So you've got an abstaining alcoholic drink person in charge of a crew. So if you want someone to look after your ship, then, he's got very strong work and moral ethics, this man. He was also very courageous. He is like kind of the epitome of the perfect captain you would want if you're owning a ship, right?
Yeah.
Now, he was... They are absolutely adamant that he would not have deserted his ship except to save his life and his crew's life. There's no way he would have just got off it. He wouldn't have given it up. You know what I mean? There's no way he would have just deserted the ship for any reason. Now, his second in command, Albert Richardson, was also considered to be fit to command himself. So you've got two officers, two high-ranking, well-reputationed men with a lot of experience in charge of this ship.
Yeah.
Right? Which is one of the reasons it makes this case so interesting, because it's not like you've got a cavalier kind of crew. You've got very moral, upstanding gentlemen in charge of the ship. So that's why it makes it so interesting, because he would not have just left.
No, he certainly sounds a sort of like serious businessman, and and he wanted his sort of trade and his business to work flawlessly, and he would go out of his way to employ the correct people for the job.
Yeah. Exactly.
And they all disappeared.
They all disappeared, yeah. Now, if it wasn't for Arthur Conan Doyle, then we probably, no one would have cared about it. It would have just passed into the annals of maritime history and been pretty much forgotten. But he wrote a short story.
Isn't this the one that wrote Tarzan?
That's an insider joke, everybody.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. But he was part of the Cottingley Ferry debacle, shall we say?
Yeah.
And Sherlock Holmes.
And Sherlock Holmes.
And Sherlock Holmes.
Exactly. So, Conan Doyle story actually called it the Marie Celeste. He changed it from the Mary. And actually it's one of the puzzles that is now infamous across the whole realm. I don't think many people don't know the story of the Mary Celeste, do you?
No, I think it's...
No, I mean, it is quite well known and being featured in a lot of sort of documentaries and even in film, I believe. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. He was paid £30 for the story in 1884.
Just an article he wrote, was it? Just
yeah, like a short story of the Mary or the Marie Celeste. So there's a lot of license taken with that story, considering, but we do have a lot of information about the real story. I will say that.
Didn't he put in that, or as the story sort of grew, they incorporated speculations of pirates, creatures from the deep, abduction by aliens, submarines, and time travel.
Oh gosh, all sorts of things have been put down to this.
Yeah,
they really have looked into all sorts of weird and wonderful avenues. But when we talk about the daring, that actually is more down that route than the Mary Celeste. Mary Celeste was just an unexplained mystery, really, at the time, whereas it sort of evolved now because of the field evolving more than back in the day. Now, the Mary Celeste sailed from New York on November the 7th. It was bound for Genoa. It had 1,701 barrels of American alcohol, right? So that's quite a lot.
Yeah. I think it's worth bearing in mind it wasn't sort of drinking alcohol. It was like industrial alcohol for industrial purposes.
Yeah, she was actually followed on the 15th of November by the Dei Gracia, which I don't know if I've said that right, which followed roughly a parallel course across the Atlantic, and that was carrying petroleum.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on December the 5th, halfway between the Azores and the Portuguese coast, the Dei Gracia came up with a brigantine which he recognised as the Mary Celeste. He knew the captain, he'd dined with him before, and he was puzzled to see the ship coming into the wind and then falling off, so it looked like she was out of control. But he knew this wouldn't be the Captain Briggs at the helm that he knew. He knew that the captain wouldn't do that. But there was no distress signal. He watched for 2 hours, was hailing her, got no reply. So they thought, we're going to just double-check this out. And they launched a small boat and boarded her. Now, the vessel, it was found to be in good seaworthy condition and that the crew had left in a hurry. That was the general impression. They'd left behind oilskin boots and pipes. He said that it was just like what was left. It looked like they'd been panicked into thinking the vessel was going to be sinking.
They
Sorry.
They seem to have sort of got off and everything you just pointed out, they seem to have got off the boat quickly. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, yeah.
Yeah, now the chronometer and the sextant were not found on board, which indicates they took off so they could navigate, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
And the last entry on the ship's slate showed that she had made the island of St. Mary in the Azores on November the 25th.
Right.
One thing that has actually been looked at quite extensively, there have been tests done, which is really, really... It's one of those where they've done experiments with this, you know what I mean? Is that it's highly possible that the leak in alcohol caught fire. That sent Captain Briggs into a panic and actually told everybody to abandon ship, right?
Yeah.
But it had always been discounted because there had been no signs of a fire or an explosion. So there's no scorch marks, there's nothing to indicate that, which is why it's been such a mystery. Right? But Dr. Andrea Sella actually built a replica of the hold of the Mary Celeste using butane gas, simulated an explosion caused by alcohol leaking from the ship's cargo. And instead of using wooden barrels, he used cubes of paper, which you would think would be more volatile, right?
Yeah, more flammable at least, yeah.
Now, setting light to the gas caused a huge blast, which sent a ball of flame upwards, and then nothing happened. Like, it exploded, but there was no residue of the flame at all. And he says what they created was a pressure wave type of explosion.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a spectacular wave of flame, but...
Yeah, but it didn't leave any remains.
Yes, exactly. Now, if you're on a ship and that happens, you're automatically going to assume you've got a high flammable cargo.
Yeah.
With alcohol. So if that's gone off, he may be thinking, oh, God, the whole thing's going to blow. Get off! Which is why they all left.
Yeah, but then if they made it to a shoreline or they made it a little way off the boat, and then they didn't see any more smoke, or they still see the ship was afloat, why didn't they go back?
Who knows?
To be fair, if they were caught in the blast, if it was unexpected, surely they would have cowered away from the flame, like you would. You'd sort of flinch a bit. And then after the flame had gone, which would have been seconds, let's face it, they really have had time to evacuate the boat? I don't think so.
I don't know.
I think he done it as a precautionary measure. I believe there was an incident like that has been said in the hold. I believe at the time when they actually boarded, the actual sort of hatches to the holds were actually open, and I think this was sort of put down. They were trying to ventilate the hold, and what I believe happened is the captain took the crew off in one of the lifeboats because I believe the Mary Celeste was also found trailing rope behind it, and I believe they went to a safe distance, sort of just kept on hold of the rope, just for a precaution, with the aim of actually reboarding the ship. They sort of got off for about a couple of hours to think, just to make sure nothing else would happen, and then to go back. But I reckon they got into difficulty whilst they're in the lifeboat and got separated.
Well, you don't know. A squall could have come up that separated the little ship from the big ship. You don't, unless you were there, it's one of those that we're never going to know the answer to. But that might be why they abandoned the ship in the first place. Mm-hmm. To see, that's a possibility, and quite a strong possibility, I would say. Yeah,
that's the one I've always sort of lent towards. I know it's quite easy to get carried away with the mystery, and but as it's
quite a plausible explanation.
It's quite a plausible one, and as we know in this sort of business, the most simplest explanations can probably be the right ones.
But that's not the only ship that's ever had reports of after it's been boarded there was no one around. I believe there was a ship that was found in the Bermuda Triangle. There's probably been a few, but again, same sort of thing. They boarded it. and found that there's still plates and stuff on the dining room tables where they've had dinner and there's rotten food on it, and so it's like they've just upped and left.
These stories are certainly about, and ships being found deserted or partially deserted and stuff are not that uncommon. At the time, especially during the Age of Sail, these weren't uncommon occurrences. So I think sort of like the Mary Celeste, sort of with the help of Arthur Conan Doyle, sort of really grabbed the attention. And this was the first heavily publicised event.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not uncommon, like you say. So they even happen in this day and age, you know, ships are found, maybe not necessarily in the condition that the Mary Celeste was found, you know, but... You know, these are going back to, you know, that sort of time. It's, you know, coming forward in time in 1919, you've got to look at the Carol A. Deering. This is, I think when people look at the Deering and then they look at the Mary Celeste, there's a crossover, because when you talk about, excuse me, I've got a rut frog today.
Oh. There's another 6 weeks in for you, me dear.
Oh God, no. I think that's pure... big getting too unfit while I'm sitting around doing nothing. I think that is, to be fair. I think, you know, there's a crossover, like on the Daring, they found like placements out, didn't they, for like food and stuff like that, which has been accredited to the Mary Celeste, which we didn't come across when we were looking at the Mary Celeste story.
No, I mean, there's a lot.
There is a lot. And then, like you said, about some of the theories behind it, again... So a lot of these are the Daring, but they cross over. They go, oh, you know, it's a good enough explanation for that, so it could be a good enough explanation for that. People mix up stories, I think, is half the problem. But the Daring is an interesting one in the way it was done or found. Now, the interesting thing is they didn't use alcohol to christen their ships. This is the problem, right? They used long-stemmed red roses. Maybe the spirits weren't very happy with that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Roses or beer and alcohol. I know which I'd go for.
Well, like I think the Deering Company might have been a bit tight on the old alcohol front and used red roses.
It seems so, yeah. They couldn't even, sort of spare a bottle of bubbly.
I know. Anyway.
Maybe they preferred Quality Street.
Well, it wasn't a very good investment for them then, was it?
Not really.
No.
The Daring set sail under the command of Captain Willis T. Wormel from Maine, Portland, Maine, and going to Rio de Janeiro on the 8th of December in the 1920s. Now, it returned from Rio, so it made the trip fine. It was spotted by the Cape Lookout lightship sailing at 5 p.m. No, 5 miles per hour even. Oh my God. Must be my nap time. According to the lookout, a man on board other than the captain hailed the lightship and reported that the vessel had lost both anchors whilst riding out a gale south of Cape Fear, and asked it to be reported to its owners. Right?
Right.
Now, the crewman didn't speak or act or look like an officer. Tall, thin, with reddish hair. And the lookout thought this was a little unusual, but still reported it in, right? 5 days later, on January the 25th, the following report was made by Captain Henry Johnson of the SS Lake Elron. Right, I'm going to read this because this is a quote. In connection with the stranding of the American schooner Carol A. Deering on North Carolina coast, January the 31st, 1921, I can report that while bound from Sagua La Grande, Cuba, towards Baltimore on January the 30th, 1921, about 3:30 p.m, we sighted a 5-masted schooner about 2 points on our starboard bow. The wind was southwest moderate, and she had all sails set and steering about north-northwest, making about 7 miles. We passed her about 5:45 p.m, about 1/2 mile off our port side. We were then about 25 miles southwest true from Diamond Shoals light vessel. From the description of the Carol A. Deering, we think that this schooner was her, but we could not read her name. There was nothing irregular to be seen on board this vessel, but she was steering at a peculiar course. She appeared to be steering for Cape Hatteras, We sighted Diamond Shoal's light vessel about 7 p.m. and passed it at 8:32 p.m. The lookout on the schooner should have sighted Cape Hatteras light, also the lightship on Diamond Shoal a little later than we did, but in plenty of time to avoid going on shore, as the weather was clear and cloudy with good visibility. There was a couple of more ships in the vicinity steering a course parallel with us, which should have convinced the captain of the schooner that he was steering a wrong course.
So it's certainly very erratic, wasn't it?
Exactly, right? They actually spotted the Caroline Deering stranded on a sandbar along the Diamond Shoals. She was battered by breaking waves. They paddled to the wreck as quickly as possible and then arrived at the ship. It was deserted. All the lifeboats were gone and the ladder was thrown over the side. So it looked like they had left, you know.
Yeah.
They had deserted the ship for some reason. But they were never seen again. They just disappeared. Did they succumb to bad weather conditions? Well, maybe not, because other ships in the area weren't reporting bad weather conditions.
No.
Yeah, with these sorts of, especially the more modern sort of like accounts from the Mary Celeste and onwards, you know, there's certainly sort of like, you can sort of track the crew's sort of like activities and up until a certain point, and it all does seem to point to them actually leaving the ship, you know. You know, with ladders down the side or trailing a rope, a lifeboat missing, you know. So these are quite tangible and quite solid evidential pointers to sort of the crew have actually left voluntary, and you would assume, even it may have been an emergency, but they have actually left.
What was peculiar is when they finally was able to actually get on board the ship on February the 5th, right? There was no sign of personal belongings of the officers or the crew. So they've taken all their stuff.
Right.
The ship's key navigational equipment and some papers were missing. The ship's anchors were missing, but we kind of know that. That's expected because that was reported, right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And red lights had been run up the mast. Yet food in the galley appeared to be laid out in preparation for a meal. 3 different sets of boots were found in the captain's cabin, and the spare bed appeared to have been slept in. The handwriting on the ship's map appeared to have changed on January the 23rd, and the steering gear was disabled with charts scattered about the master's quarters. The only living soul aboard the Caroline Deering was actually the ship's 6-toed cat.
Ooh.
So it is weird.
Taken over by shapeshifters.
Ooh, but this is where it becomes weird.
Whether piracy was prevalent around the area at the time, you can't discount that, I suppose. Even though you think, it's quite sort of late on for piracy, but that still goes on today, you know, sort of. And as we know, sort of in the Far East, and especially off the coast of Somalia, is probably the most famous instances going on. So it still happens.
Yeah, piracy is not it's not died a death, is it? It still happens to this day. So whether or not it was, but where were they? Why did they let it ashore? If they surely, you know what I mean? When you start looking at it, you start asking, that in itself asks questions.
It does.
You know,
it's you don't know, or could the crew, could this be like a conspiracy from the crew, all got together, the captain, you know, you don't know what sort of circumstances sort of at home and he might have had, and they said, might be able to pull an insurance job. We get off the ship, we sail to shore, we just let the ship go, it will flounder and sink, and, you know, we will claim the insurance.
Yeah, but then there'd be a record of the people getting off the boat, wouldn't there?
Mm.
There would be the claim to show where they are.
Yeah, true, but this would it would also require the whole crew to be complicit in it, I suppose.
Yeah, or maybe it was a mutiny, and then they realised that they couldn't sail the ship because they weren't the captains they thought they might have been, and it all went a bit Pete Tong, and then they all disappeared off. Who knows? You know, it's one of those, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't suggest that. I mean, when you look at it, all the personal belongings of the officers or the crew, there was no sign of the belongings of the officers or the crew. Did they pack them all up and send them off on a ship, the captains, and then when it all failed to go the way the crew thought it was, they all decided to leave the ship themselves? You know, who knows? You know, if it could be that, it could be something like that. We'll never know because nobody was found. You know, there was no crew members have since been found or was found after the incident. So, you know, what happened to it? Again, huge conspiracy theories surround this one. And I think the problem with this one is the sighting of the lightship said that the description of the man kind of fits in with some UFO reports of what an alien looked like. You know, some people have reported being tall, thin, with reddish hair. You know, that kind of fits in a ufology kind of scenario of some witnesses that have stated they've spoken to a weird person that was tall, thin, had red hair, didn't act in the way you would expect them to act. It was unusual, you know. And I think that's why maybe the ufology world picked up on this and linked the ufology world to it. I don't know. I kind of can't see a ship coming down, or like a spaceship, coming down and plucking all of the crew and the captains and all their belongings off the ship and leaving maybe a token person there to I don't know, do whatever, and then I just can't see it. I think it's more likely to be either mutiny from the crew or piracy.
Yeah.
In my honest opinion on that one. But it's a mystery. It's a mystery because we don't know. And that's all a mystery is, isn't it? It's something we don't know and can't explain at the moment.
We can't explain,
mystery and history.
A mystery of history. Gotta love a mystery of history. Now, coming in again a little bit earlier in life, 1955, the MV Joyita. It's a merchant vessel, 25 passengers and crew mysteriously disappeared in the South Pacific. No one was on board. The ship was in very poor condition, eroded pipes, a radio which, you know, although functional, was very minimal in regards to range, only about 2 miles.
Yeah.
And had faulty wiring. The extreme buoyancy of the ship made sinking nearly impossible. But they don't know why they didn't stay on the ship until help came if they got into trouble.
Yeah. Well, it seems the ship was, even though it may have been in poor condition, was still technically serviceable. You know, you weren't going to sink on it. I mean, if you were on a sound ship and, you know, and say you lost all power, you know, you'd probably be better off to stay on board the ship and wait until be found, even though you would drift, and to sort of take the lifeboats and stuff.
Again, it's a mystery.
Go on, Toya, you bang another one out.
Now, her original departure was actually delayed because of an engine clutch failure. But she did so, but she got it repaired and she left. You know, a little bit late, but she was there. Now, some of her passengers were quite standing people. So you've got a government official, a doctor, a World War II surgeon, no doubt, no less, should I say, a buyer, a copra buyer, and 2 children. And the cargo was medical supplies, timber, and 80 empty oil drums and various foodstuffs. So her cargo is not that, I don't know.
I should imagine valuable as such. It's not that, you know, no, you can't see anyone sort of targeting that for the value of the cargo, because that's quite specialist and medical equipment, you know. No, I can't see.
It's not a long voyage. It was only supposed to take between 41 and 48 hours.
But from the account, as you read out at the start, I mean, the ship did, and even though this contradicts what I said earlier, I mean, the ship did seem in quite poor repair, didn't it? I mean, it had clutch problems, and by the sounds of it, it had a knackered radio, and it was quite a rusty old hulk, but it was still It still floated. You know?
It's a rusty bucket, I think we can say on this one.
Yeah.
But it's extremely buoyant, so the chances of it sinking is minimal, right?
True, but did the crew or did the passengers know that at the time? Yeah.
I would have thought the crew were.
Yeah.
Would have, but anyway. Nobody received any distress calls from the crew. She was overdue, so they sent out a search and rescue mission, and they covered nearly 100,000 square miles of ocean during the search.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one thing we can safely say is one of the hardest searches to do is a sea search.
Definitely.
Yeah, a sea and rescue
To
search.
spot someone in the sea is really difficult.
Yeah.
That's why when they have lifeboats and stuff, they're like bright orange and they have lights flashing on them and all sorts. Because it is really difficult to see them.
Yeah. That's the only thing I would say. I mean, sea rescue is, even today, one of the hardest things to find, isn't it? I mean, you've only got to look at the airplane that they were trying to find a little while ago.
Absolutely.
And they still haven't found it. If it went
Wasn't
down
that in the Indian Sea?
Yeah, if it went down over the sea, they didn't even find any debris to indicate. And this is a problem,
that's right.
you know, with sea rescue. Now, oh dear. So they've covered a huge amount of area during their search, but they didn't see any sign of the Joy Eater nor any of her passengers or the crew. Now, 5 weeks later, on the November the 10th, Gerard Douglas, captain of the merchant ship Tuvalu, we'll say that, yeah?
Yeah.
He was going from Suva to Funafuti.
Yeah, Filafati, let's go there instead.
Anyway, he sighted the
Road
ship.
trip.
Yeah, let's go there.
Yeah.
She sighted the Joy Eater more than 600 miles west from her scheduled route, drifting north of Vanuatu. I do apologise for my pronunciation, everybody. I'm English. I can barely manage that sometimes. Now,
This is why we let her say the funny words.
Because they find it so funny.
Listening to her.
They find it so funny. The ship was partially submerged and listing heavily. So she's sort of like on her side. So she's not in a good state, right? But there was no trace of any of the passengers or crew. 4
I've
tons...
got a feeling that's down to the rum.
Maybe.
Yeah.
4 tons of cargo were also missing. So this could have been a pirate.
Yes. What was the cargo? Did it?
Medical supplies, timber, empty drums, food supplies, you know, not... So we wouldn't have thought it would be worthwhile to somebody, but you don't know, do you?
Yeah.
I mean, if the pirates wanted medical supplies, it's always a need, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose there could possibly, there could be a black market in medical supplies and stuff. Yeah, there's, anything's a saleable commodity to the right market, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose you're right there.
You get all sorts, even lungs and stuff like that.
And and especially perhaps in that part of the world, where sort of, medical supplies may not be that plentiful. So,
Now, they did notice that the radio was tuned into the International Marine Radio Telegraph Distress Channel. So whatever happened, they were trying to send a distress signal out, but the radio was crap. It was 2 miles, for God's sakes. That's all the only radio it
you're not
had.
going to get a lot there.
No. Now, there are photographs of this particular ship as well when they saw her. Now, barnacle growth was high above the usual waterline on the port side, showing she'd been listing heavily for some time. Quite a long time, I would have thought. I don't know how long it takes barnacles to grow but or attach, but, yeah. I don't know. There was damage to her. Her flying bridge had been smashed away and the deck house had light damage and broken windows. Canvas awning had been rigged on top of the deck house behind the bridge. It actually carried a dinghy and 3 Carly life rafts, but they were all missing, which actually indicates they all left the ship.
Well, yeah.
Mm.
She didn't carry enough life jackets for everybody on board, though.
I think that's reminiscent of most ships, I think, isn't it? At that period.
At that period of time, 1955 this was.
No, you would have thought they would have had... they possibly could have had enough for everyone. But this sort of like... The way you're going now with it probably, does sound like a sort of piracy.
Well, or major problems with the ship. I mean, the starboard engine was found to be covered by mattresses. Why would they do that? whereas the port engine's clutch was still partially disassembled. So it shows that the vessel was running, but only on one engine. So it looks
Sounds
like they
like
got
they
into
were
trouble.
They were having problems almost from the off by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably like the perfect mechanical storm, so to speak. You know, everything, one thing went wrong and everything started to go wrong.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah, this is it. Now, the electric clocks on board, which were actually wired into the vessel's generator, had actually stopped at 10:25, and the switches for the cabin lighting and navigational lights were on, implying that whatever had occurred happened at night. The ships, again, this is another thing, the logbook, sextant and mechanical chronometer and other navigational equipment, as well as the firearms, were missing.
See, didn't they used to, when there was a mutiny on board, didn't the captains used to throw away that sort of stuff? Throw that stuff overboard so no one could go anywhere without a captain, basically.
I don't know.
I'm sure there was a reason for them to throw that into the sea. It could have, maybe they were being attacked by pirates, as you said, and like they thought, well, they're not going to get away using my stuff.
But again, this all points to, you know, activity on the ship of some sort, doesn't it? You know, sort of whilst they were having a problem. This does point towards there was some sort of problem they were concerned with, or I mean, especially with the sextant, the navigational equipment going, firearms going, you know, these are the sort of things you would have to take with you. Maybe
they thought they had more chance in the lifeboats to get to help than they did on the ship, because if she was going off, if she was that badly damaged that she couldn't sail in the, the trading routes, she was just going off. They thought, well, maybe if we're in smaller ships, we'd have more chance than actually staying on a ship that was flooding and sinking and beset with problems. Maybe it seemed more of a option at the time. You don't know, but there has a book been written on this by David Wright, and he reckons he has solved one of the greatest marine mysteries of the Pacific Islands. But you're going to have to go and read his book to find out what his theory is.
I'm
going to leave you on a cliffhanger. I'm going to leave you on a cliffhanger today. So if you want to know solve the mystery, I think we've actually done it, quite frankly. But you know, what do I know? You know, I'm not that I'm a mariner in any way, shape or form, but it seems a logical assumption, doesn't it, on that one? But it is a ghost ship mystery, and we see, you know, sightings, or not just sightings, but, you know, all sorts of tales and stories of ghost ships or phantom ships across the ages coming out from the marine world. But as we found out, there are very superstitious lot sailors. Anyway, on that note, we've actually come to the end of the show, my beautiful boys.
Oh wow!
Show that was quick.
It's a fascinating topic when you start delving into it, and we have covered quite a bit today on this show. But if you want to find out more, go look do some research for yourselves, because some of it is absolutely fascinating and equally hysterical, particularly in regards to the superstitions. On that note, we will be back on a Tuesday next week, ready for your next Paranormal Concept show, exclusive to the Paranormal UK Radio Network. On that note, we bid you a fine farewell. Say good night, guys.
Good night, guys.